Hello Internet, good morning. This is Michael from Trike Bike, and today I'm going to do the assembly of a 20-inch electric trike bike. So basically we've just unwrapped everything to make the job easier. I've laid out our parts on the bench, so we've got a light that we're going to use later, some cables for the front brake. We've got some electrical cable that we use for wrapping, our front brake caliper, our disc and the bolts to mount it, our chain. In here we've got all of our hardware. So I'm just going to lay that out on the bench. We need these quite large bolts to start with. So I'm going to lay them out as we need them. So we have one on one side and three on the other. And that's because some are already inserted into the frame. Also got a packet of reflectors, which we'll leave till last, and our pedals. So I'll just break those apart now. And the pedals are marked with little stickers that say left and right. So we'll go through those a bit later. The first step we need to do is to mount the rear axle assembly to the main frame. Now we've got some car jacks to do this, and it makes the job a lot easier. That's our rear axle assembly. And our frame I've got sitting on top of a box over here. I'll just bring that over. And we can start by aligning the two of them together. Just take out this packing piece on the back. Oh, still got some plastic on there. Just get that off. Okay, we can align the frame to the rear axle assembly. I'm just going to put a bolt through on this side. And I'll go around and do the same on the other side. Just now going to mount these three bolts in this side. You'll need to just wiggle the frame and the rear axle assembly up and down to get everything to align. Make sure there's no bits of plastic left on anywhere. And once we've got those in loosely, I'm just going to fit the washers and the nuts to these bolts. Then we come up to one of the most important tasks of the whole tricycle assembly, and that's matching the front frame to the rear frame, but also to keep it nice and aligned so it's not off at an angle. Really important. Now when we're doing assembly, because we've been doing this for years and years, we use tools, electric tools, but for most of the assembly we actually use 12 volt. Not 18 volt, because a 12 volt is a much lower torque setting and makes it much easier to do without over tightening everything. So I'm just going to position this side. I've lifted it up so the weight is pushing down to hold the frame in the correct position, and lift up one side. Gotta make sure the heads are lined up properly. Okay, that's one side. We're going to do the same for the other side. Pull it down as we tighten it. Okay, we can carefully lay that back down. Just going to remove these packing pieces off the rear axle. And I'm also going to remove the packing piece off the front axle as well. Now I'm just going to check the forks. Quite often when the forks come, they're a little bit stiff. So I've just grabbed this and I'm just winding it, and it again is a little bit stiff. So I'm just going to loosen this top nut off the front of the forks just a little bit, and now it's beautiful and smooth. So that task is complete. Now what I didn't mention to you a few moments ago is that when we did the unpacking, I took the battery out of the frame and I put it over on the charger. So while we're doing all of this, we've got the battery on charge. There's a couple of little plastic fittings down here we have to remove. Bit hard to see from my side, but they're done. So our next step is to check the back end, make sure everything's nice and level, which I can see now that it is, and then we'll go ahead and fit the chain. The chain is in its plastic bag, so we're just going to open that up, and I'm looking for the pin which is on one side. So I'm going to lay the chain out with the pin pointing to me. Okay, I'm going to lay it on top of the plastic bag so it doesn't get dirty, and I'm just going to feed it through the derailleur gear section, then through the derailleur itself. So there's only one way for this to fit, so it goes over the top of the gear cluster, around the first one of the derailleur, comes through the fitting, and then around the second gear of the derailleur. So I'm just going to get our chain link joining tool here. We recommend you use the proper tool. You can get away with using pliers and a small washer, and in emergencies I do that, but normally I fit everything correctly with a chain link tool. So we can join the chain. Just going to squeeze that through. Sometimes it's a bit hard to get it in the right spot because the chain is lightly oiled and everything becomes slippery. So I'm pushing the pin through with our special chain link tool. Going to position it so it's about perfectly centered, and you'll see the chain is now quite stiff, so we have to loosen that up, and we do that by twisting it sideways to give it some freedom in the movement. You can see now it's moving quite nice. I'm just going to stretch it again one more time. That should do us, and I'll put it around the front chain ring. The chain is now fitted. Now what I like to have is the gear cluster in the correct position before we start. So I'm just going to tap this over. You can just use a pair of pliers or something because it's not hard to move it. And the gear cluster has got a collar on the inside. Now I'm just going to loosen that collar slightly, and I'm going to slide the cluster over towards the frame. I want there to be about the thickness of a business card, so about 1/2–3/4 of a millimetre, and I'm going to tighten it up again. That's given me the perfect position for starting. Now one thing I'm going to do now is go around to the fine adjuster on the derailleur. I'm going to wind that out about 2 turns. I do that now because I always forget later. Now what I've got to do is adjust the travel limits, the amount of movement of the derailleur itself. So I can see here it's wanting to jump just a little bit. So I'm going to adjust the top screw, what we call the low screw. My correction, the high screw. I'm going to adjust that out a little bit. I can see there it's not jumping. I'm going to push the derailleur over while I pedal, and it's not making it all the way to the top cog. It's only getting to the second one. So I'm going to go to the bottom screw, which is marked L for low, and I'm going to wind it out about a turn. Whoop, that just jumped off then. I'll just try that again. So pushing the derailleur over, still not made it. So I'm going to go another turn. We'll try that one more time. There, now it's up all the way perfectly. I'm going to come back down Now it's not making it all the way to the bottom, but the axle's moved over a little bit, so I'm just going to adjust that out a smidgen. And I'm sure that is going to work now. Perfect. So what that means now is that our chain and gear alignment is now perfect. We don't need to do any more adjustments to that until we fit the rear axle. Bit of action outside here. There's a couple of birds having a bit of a fight. We've got a little waterway out the back, and the birds come down and sometimes have a bit of a fighting match out there as they're looking for food. Okay, I can now fit the chain guard, so I'm going to go and locate that from what we unwrapped previously. So I'm going to bring the chain guard back. I'm going to locate the screw packet for this. So there's 3 screws in this packet. That's them there. Now we throw these bags out because we've got thousands of them. But we do keep a stash for all the spare parts we send out. So I'd recommend keeping those little zip seal bags because they come in quite useful. Now again, I'm going to fit this. I'm using a 12 volt low powered impact driver. I don't suggest you, if you're not using hand, don't use anything more than 12 volt because you'll damage everything. Going to wind this around, put the chain guard over the pedal ring, and I'm just going to start this off. There's 3 bolts, 2 are the same, and the third one goes on the back. Now I may not be able to get under this because I don't have the front wheel on, so let me just do this by hand for a second. Nearly had it. There you go. Now we've got alignment here which is really good, but quite often you'll find that the guard is sitting low or high, in which case you can tighten these nuts and then use the chain guard itself as a lever to put it into the correct position. So you can move them without any problems. Okay. Again, we're doing a bike, so it doesn't need to be over tightened. I'm just going to lift this up. So I've got some room and I'll come in underneath, which is hard because I can't see what I'm doing and I can't feel what I'm doing. Okay, so now the chain guard is on. We can fit our pedals. So remember I said before we've got a left and a right, and it's important that they go on the right side. Now the right hand the right hand side has a right hand thread. So that's traditionally the way you would put a bolt into something. But the left hand side, it works differently. It has a left hand thread, and that's to stop it coming loose while you're pedaling. So we turn this one to the left. I get it started, and now I just finish it off with this tool. So we put on a special spanner. Now we need to turn opposite direction to the rotation for it to do up. Okay, that's nice and tight. You can hear that scraping while I was pedaling. That's just your chain guard. So I'm just going to move the chain guard over a little bit to stop it from scraping, and we'll go again on this side. So again, rotating backwards. You can hear that noise is gone. I'm just going to lock that in. Pedals are now fitted. I'm going to go round to the front wheel. Okay, I'm going to pull these plastic caps off either side of the front wheel. Now on this side we have the mounting point for the front disc brake. So what I'm going to do is just grab everything I need. Okay, over here we've got our disc, and we've got 6 bolts. Some of these discs actually have a little arrow on them to tell you which way they turn. Honestly, it doesn't matter. So we can just fit that over the top. We'll get our 6 little nuts. You can see they've got a blue, looks like a blue paint on there. That's actually Loctite. So these are ready to go on as they are. So we're going to use for this a little 4mm Allen key to get it started. So I'll just get each of these started. Whoop, there's one on the ground. Like most people, I usually drop about half of what I handle when I'm putting the trike together. They can get a long way away from you. That was almost the other side, be a good metre away from where I dropped it. So these are all now started, which is great. Again, for speed, we're going to use electrics. So we go here, we go exactly opposite. We go opposite, 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 and opposite. So you're tightening up in a crisscross pattern from there to there, from there to there, from there to there. So we're going to wind off the wheel nuts. We're going to wind them all the way out. You can even take them off if you prefer, and we're ready to fit it onto the bike. So what we need to do, make sure the washers are out of the road. You've got your little washers here which stop the wheel from twisting. So I'm going to align them perfectly so they're pointing downwards on both sides. So that means the cable is coming out the bottom of the hub. So that was pretty easy. Push down on everything, make sure the wheel is in the centre. And we're going to tighten that up with 15mm. Now what I like to do is just do it gently to start with and pull everything nice and tight, and then you can go and just do the final tightening. If you tighten one side completely and then go back to the other side, you can sometimes get the wheel to twist. Always leave the tyre flat, because now we're going to fit the front mudguard. Now I have our front mudguard. I've got our mudguard frame that goes there, and I've also got our hardware, mounting hardware in the back here. So again, keep that or throw it out. I suggest you keep it, it's just that we've got thousands of them. Now I'm just going to duck away from the camera. I'm just going to put a little bend in here. So I'm just going to put this bracket in the vise and just bend it a little bit. I find that that stops the vibration you get while you're riding. Okay, back again. I've just done the bend in the vise. Now we're going to put on our bracket. You want to make sure that the bracket is hanging central. You select the right hardware for this. I'll just get this started. Again, we're not doing a dozer or a tractor or anything big that requires over tightening. This is a bicycle. and there's very few nuts and bolts on the whole thing which are tightened excessively. I've got everything in the centre. Just going to do that up. Now I'm going to swap out for a 10mm socket. Again, you can just use a 10mm spanner. So we're going to push the mudguard through. Because the tyre's flat, we can still fit it through underneath the fork joiner. And lift that up, hold it central. There's a bolt goes on each side to hold the mudguard frame. And around the other side. Okay, that's nice and firm, and by having that little bend it just stops the vibration and everything happening in that front mudguard. It can make some sounds and noises as you're riding along. So now I'm going to fit the front disc brake caliper. So we can lay that out. So in here we've got 2 bolts. I've got what they call a split washer and a normal washer, and I'm going to put them on in the right order. I'm going to go on this one, split washer, normal washer, and I'm just going to put the correct tool onto my driver. Now you won't see this really easily, but there's a slot on this side where the brake pads work. That of course goes over the disc caliper itself, and then we bolt everything to the frame of the fork. So, get the right bolts, I nearly picked up the wrong ones. I'm just going to start that by hand. Even if you're using a driver like this, you must always start everything by hand. That way it stops any cross threading. So that's in the right spot. Now just going to do it up. I'm going to use an M5 and an M2.5 Allen key just to adjust the settings for this disc. Now there's other videos on our website that are going to show you how to do this much easier than this video will. So I've adjusted one side and it's going pretty well. The M2.5 Allen key in the other side. No noise. I've got that adjusted pretty well. So that's the disc brake caliper fitted and aligned. What are we going to do next? We're going to do the handlebars next. A lot of people get the handlebars and they can't get them in. That's because there's a black plug over the end of the handlebar. You need to slide that off, otherwise you'll never get it in. That goes in the bin because you can't reuse it, and the handlebar will now slide into the top of the forks. I want to spin around backwards for a minute. Now we're going to use an M6. Now I can see there's a little mark on the side of the gooseneck here, or the fork handlebar quill. So that's the minimum insertion, so you can't have that out any further than what it is, that minimum mark. Now I'm going to leave all of this loose because we'll need to do final adjustments and alignments when we get to that bit. Okay, I'm going to now fit the front basket. So we have our front basket bracket. I'm just going to momentarily hold it in place and work out which way is going to be the best. So that's definitely the best way. Sometimes you have to rotate that around depending on which way they've done a few things. Okay, let me find In packet 7 I can find the hardware that I need for this bracket. Good. Okay, I'm just going to mount this bracket loosely to start with. I'm just going to throw the bolts through the bottom of the bracket, and we're going to do the same again. But this time, before I go any further, I'm going to lift the bracket up into its mounting spot. Change this over to Phillips head. And I'm just going to loosely tighten these to start with. Now, we've got our 2 M10 nuts there that we need to use to mount this bracket to the forks. Sometimes you need a couple of extra hands to get this all lined up. I'm just going to tighten them. Again, it's a 10mm bolt. So when I say 10mm, it's a 6mm thread, but a 10mm head. So you use an M10 spanner. Now, what we've got here in the packet, and it's always been this way, there's a couple of M5 nuts, but I don't like using them because they can come loose too easily. So I'll go now into the bag of reflectors, and in here there's a couple of M5s, but they've got quite a head on them. They've got a flange that's all roughed up. So I prefer to use those instead of the ones it's designed for, because I find that if you put them on and tighten them up correctly, it'll never come loose. Where I believe the other ones can come loose because some people report that their baskets come loose. Now that could be they just didn't tighten them up properly. Could be anything. But that's what I do. So M8 on the back here, we're just going to tighten it up. I'm just going to lift it up a little bit. That's it. Fairly firm. Now we can tighten the back basket up in the front. That's good. Front basket is now mounted. So now we can look at doing a few things like our brake cables. I'm just going to wind that around, fit in the brake cable into the handlebar lever, push it through. I'm going to go up to the rear, align everything here, push it through, and I'm going to pull the cable through so I've got enough. That's looking pretty good. I won't connect that till I've got the wheels on, and that's because without the wheels that rear axle can slide backwards and forwards just a little bit, not much, but just enough to cause problems. This is an electric bike, so we've got a cable harness with 3 outlets. So on this side we've got the keypad, so it goes black to black, and we're just going to rotate it around until you line up the little arrows, or you can feel the little indent. Just going to go around this side. There we go. Push that in, and there's the same for the front brake on that other side. There's a little plug here in the top. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to center the bracket for the seat, and we'll grab the seat. Okay, seat can go in. So that's way too loose here, so I'm just going to tighten it up a little bit. Try it again. That's much firmer, so I know the seat is pretty good. It's not going to slip when someone sits on it. Yep, I tried to twist it and it won't twist, so I'm just going to check the nuts are on tight enough on the seat, and it's a 13mm. So I tighten up that side, just tighten up that side. In this position the seat is sitting pretty level, which is great, but you know, on different bikes the men prefer the seat down a bit at the front to give them a little bit more room on the pommel. Girls like the seat up a little bit, so it's just set it now, try it. If you don't like it, you can go back and set it again. Okay. We're ready now for our battery, but it's still on charge, so I'm going to leave that for a little while. And I'm going to go around for our wheels. Now this wheel here has got a bearing on both sides. So that's our left-hand wheel. Goes on the other side. We need our right-hand wheel. Now the right-hand wheel has got a bearing on this side. It's got a cutout on this side, and that cutout goes onto the collar on the rear axle. So I'm just going to take off the two nuts and the washer. I'm going to fit this on and align it so the wheel slides over that collar. We can now do this up. I'm just going to put the normal hex nut on, just half a turn. I'm going to grab the correct tools to tighten it, but more importantly, Loctite. Always give your Loctite a bit of a shake. Now with Loctite you only need a tiniest amount, so just think of it as needing about the same size as what you would see on the top of a matchstick, the red part. That's all you need, you don't need any more than that. Now the right hand wheel on this model of trike is the drive and brake wheel, so it needs to be done up nice and firm. There is a torque setting for it. Oh, didn't plan that very well. There is a torque setting for it, but I just find that if I get it on tight, it'll never come off. Okay, we'll go over to the other side. I'll remove the dome nut, the normal hex nut. Now there's two washers on this side and there's a collar. Collar stays on the bike. I'm going to pull off both washers. I'm just going to check the tread direction. You want the tread direction to be the same direction as on the other side, so it points like a little arrow to the front. So you can't see this, but I'm going to fit a washer on. I'm going to put some Loctite on. And I'll put some Loctite in the dome nut. Now, the second most important thing of assembling this tricycle. The first one was making sure the rear axle assembly is aligned with the frame, and we did that by lifting everything up. The second one is not to tighten this nut too much. Now, the actual torque setting on it is 4.5 Newton meters. So we know with it, we use a torque wrench normally, but what I'm doing now, I'm just going to show you how to do it. So I've just done it up so it's not firm, but just a little bit of pressure, and I'm going to back it off because 4.5 is just above finger tight. I'll back it off a little bit more. I want to feel for any wobble in the wheel when I push it sideways, so clunk, clunk. I've just got that now, so I'm just going to tighten it just a fraction. I'm going to wind that dome nut in. Now this is where you need two spanners. Put one on here, and we're going to lock them together. So now it's locked. This wheel is on nice and free and loose. If you over tighten it, it'll cause excessive pressure on the bearings, and then you'll get all sorts of trouble. Now I'm just going to inflate the tyres. If you read the manual, you'll know that this model of trike is 55 psi. So I was 52 the first time, 55 spot on the second. Do this other wheel. $58, too much. That's it. So I come back a bit. It's now at 55 and it's going to be the same on the front wheel. Now different trike models vary the pressure. So something like the fat wheel trike, it will only ever operate on 15 or 16 psi. It doesn't need any more than that. The smaller wheels, tend to have more pressure. Okay, so our tyres are pumped up nice. I want to connect up the electrics down this end, so I just pull off this little fitting that keeps it from getting damaged. Again, I'm going to find the arrows, align them and push them straight in. You don't want to do any wiggling or anything like that. With the electric ones, we'll get a cable tie. You get a couple of cable ties, in fact, and we'll put one around the base here. So I'm just going to push all that in nice and close to the wheel. Don't over tighten these because otherwise you can actually damage the cable. Some people tighten the cable ties so much. Okay, I'm going to push it around behind the front fork leg. That'll give it the protection it needs. And if I can find my little pliers, I'm just going to clip off the extra. When you're clipping these off, make sure you clip them off nice and close. You don't want the tab hanging out on a sharp angle because it will cut you if you manage to rub past it. I'm going to put one more on here because the way this cable is, it's hanging out a little bit. That's just the way the cable is attached and bent. So I'm just going to tighten. Now it's loose, but it's just enough to pull it into the right position. Okay, all those little bits of cable will go into the bin. They can't be used or recycled. So now we've got the gear change. So before we do that, I can actually now just connect this back brake up. I want to make sure at the front that the cable is in the right position. I'm going to go around to the back and we need to align the disc just like we did previously on the front. So I'm just going to wind the caliper over to get it into the right spot. That's good. Now I'm going to adjust the 2.5 hex screw to, I think I've over tightened it there. No, it's actually good. So now I can attach the cable. I like to use pliers to grip the cable, pull it nice and tight and firm. Just hang on to that to remove any slack and then you can tighten the cable clamp. That's it, perfect. I'm just going to go around to the hand brake lever and just check that. Make sure it's braking properly. Oh, that's nice. Now, in part of these little screws and nuts, you can get some cable ferrules. They go over the end of the cable to stop it from ever fraying. We use special pliers to do it, but you can pretty much squeeze it with anything just to stop the cable from fraying in the future. So that's our back end done with the brakes. we still have to fit our gear change cable, which I'm going to do now. So up on the handlebar, you will find the cable looped around. Now that's on this bike. On some of the other models, it's not fitted. Now you want to be really careful on doing this because you don't want any kinks in the wire. If you have kinks in the wire, then your gear change won't work correctly. So we've got our cable, I'm going to feed it through. And again, take your time, make sure you don't push that hard that you kink it, because if you kink it, it makes life pretty hard in the future. I'm going to pull that through out the back, so we've got plenty of room. The cable will pop out any second, there it goes. I'm going to pull it up into the handlebar gear change unit and make sure it's pushed all the way in. I'm going to push this button to make sure that I'm in gear number 6. That's really important. Now we can come round the back and I can pull this cable tight. Now I'll have another look, make sure everything's seated correctly, which it is. I'm going to pull a little bit more cable through and I'm going to fit the cable into the derailleur adjuster. I'm going to pull a bit more through because we're still a bit tight. I like to have a fairly large loop in this area to remove any friction. Okay, so using our pliers again, I'll just get everything, and if I squeeze it hard enough, give it a tap to make sure there's nothing loose in there and all the slack is taken. I'm using an M9 spanner to release the cable clamp. Now I'm just going to tighten that up. Fairly firm. We've got a lot of cable left over, so I'm just going to use pliers to cut it off. You want to leave about 50 or 60 millimetres of brake cable hanging out the end. I'll just grab that ferrule and I'll fit the ferrule on. That'll stop it from coming unravelled and getting all spiky and sharp. Now we need to check our gears to see how they're working. So I'm just going to pedal gently. I'm just going to take it from 6 to 5. So I saw the derailleur move over and it's just moved up, but it did a couple of jumps before it got there. Now that's okay for now. We're just going to go, we'll do the next one. 4, 3. I can hear a bit of chatter noise coming. That tells me it's not lined up perfectly, but I'm going to go to 2. More chatter. I'm going to go into 1. So it just makes it into 1. So I'm just going to adjust the bottom bolt, which is the one that's marked low. Just going to adjust that out a little bit just to give it a bit more movement there. And I'm going to quickly go all the way back down to gear 6. Now you can only change gears while you're pedaling. If you're not pedaling, you can do some damage, you'll bend things. So I'm going now up into 5, 4, 3. Now I don't have that chatter as much, but I'm just going to have a look at the back. You could probably come in a little bit, so I'm just going to wind this adjuster half a turn. You don't need much. A lot of people wind it a lot and they get into trouble. So there's no chatter at all there. Now it's perfect. Up 1, up to the top gear. You go down a gear, down another gear. Look, all that now is perfect. Go back up into top gear. So our gearing is now finished. Everything's right to go. So our brakes and everything, we can go ahead and fit the basket. Okay, rear basket, it's got a little tab on the back. We put that to the facing the back. That way if you want to mount a light or something in the future you can. And I use my fists and just put my fists beside the tyres, and that'll help you line up the centre. Now it's always going to be usually about 3 mil to the left, because that's just the way all of the wires work when they put the basket together. So I've positioned that nicely. We now have our tabs, our basket brackets, and I'm going to open the hardware for the rear basket. So it's a bolt and a washer to start with. So I'm just going to prepare the 4 of them so I can put them through all at once. Okay, with my 4, I'll grab both of these basket brackets. I'm just going to go around the back here and fit them in. Now there's no right or wrong way for these brackets. Some people fit them what I call north-south, others fit them east-west. It doesn't really matter. I like north-south because it gives a bit of strength in the basket between these 2 mounting rails. If you don't need the strength, then you don't, it doesn't matter. You also need to think about, some people don't use the rear basket. They actually will go off and buy a big tub from somewhere like Bunnings and fit a big plastic tub on the back for fishing or for their dog. So I'm just fitting the nuts onto these bolts. Now these bolts have a M14 head and an M13 nut. Really quite unusual, but they have larger than standard heads on them just to spread the load a little bit in the basket. When you're putting it all together, I always like to pull the basket backwards when I tighten it up as well. So we're going to get an M14, M13. We don't need it super tight, so I'm just going to use an a 12 volt driver. Pull it backwards. Just nip it up. They're nylock nuts, so they're not going to come loose by themselves. We don't need the M14 anymore, so I can put that away. Put this 10 mil away. I now need a reasonable sized flat blade screwdriver because I'm going to fit the wheel reflectors. So the reflectors are made up of 2 parts. You fit these opposite to the valve location. So we filled up the tyre here. So in this case we're going to fit them over this side. And you do that for wheel balance. If you put all of the weight over one side, then you will cause a little bit of irregularity while you're riding. Most people would never notice, but if you're an Olympian or something, you would notice. But it's always just good habit. So when these go in, it's pretty much about 1/4 of a turn to tighten them. So we'll fit it on, push it so it's flat, put the little nipple part in, and you just twist it. Pull the reflector down so it's held in firmly everywhere. If you over tighten these, you'll just break them. Okay, we've got a few things to finish off here. Got a front reflector to do. So I'm just going to grab the reflector. I'm going to put it into the holder. I'm going to put that up onto the front handlebars and using the Phillips head and this little bolt, we'll screw it into place. Again, this is only plastic into plastic, so if you over tighten it, it's just going to split it and break it. There you go, that's done. Our bell, unless you've got some sort of disability, the bells will normally always go on the left hand side, but it's a personal preference. We can tell that one works. I'm just going to put the screw in the back. Again, don't over tighten the bell, it's only plastic. Now we're almost coming down to it. We've got 2 reflectors left and we've got 2 packets of bolts. So, there's some small bolts. They're for the rear mudguards, to attach the rear mudguard to the frame. They're an M5 bolt. Here are 4 M6 bolts, and they're designed to attach the... And there's some M6 bolts, and they're designed to attach the mudguard frame and the mudguard to the actual bike frame itself. So the first thing we're going to do here is fit our reflectors. So it's those and the little M5 nuts. We'll put these on and do them up nice and tight. I'll go over to this side and do the same again. Fairly firm for them, you don't want them coming off. Now we're going to do the mudguard frames. So this is our mudguard frame. We're going to attach the M5 bolts. M5 bolts have a 8mm head. So we've just got a little socket driver here. Just going to put that on. And again, start them by hand. If you are using tools, and you don't need to, but we do it here just for speed, so we always start them by hand and then just tighten them up. So we're going to leave these loose for now. Because we're going to adjust them as we get closer to the end. Okay, so that's the right hand side, so we've got the mounting on here, so it goes onto the right hand side. It's important to know that if you muck that up, you'll end up with 2 rights or 2 lefts, and that's no good to you. So here, I'm going to mount it this way, so our reflector is on the back, our mounting's on the left. So we're going to go in, we'll start them by hand again. That's 1. That's 2. Again, leave them loose because you've got to adjust them. Okay. These are now ready to go onto the bike. We're almost done. Just got to do the guards, and then we've... Okay, a couple of final adjustments. I'll line up the front wheel and hold it between my legs. The handlebars are off, so I'm just going to move them into the centre using an M6 Allen key wrench. I'm going to nip that up. So don't over tighten it, but you want it fairly firm. Now we have to fix these cables. We've got cables just flopping around here, and this coily bandy stuff is what we use. So first of all, just going to cut off the end. So I've got a clean starting point, and I'm going to go from here to here with one piece. So I'll just cut that off. Some people say this part is therapeutic. But what we want to do is just start it off, start wrapping it around. Going to come down a bit, yep. Just pull this up a smidgen. We want to just give it a little bit more room around the bell so the cables won't touch the bell. Then as we get closer, we can drop a cable out of this looping if we want to give it more room. And then we can drop the last one out. So now we're just onto the brake cable, which has got the most strength. Okay, we'll come down here and just finish off. Now I want to do a little bit more underneath here. So I'm going to cut another section off. I'm going to join this third cable in from the other side. Good. And let's see what we do here. So I'm a bit twisted. I'll pull this plug apart. I'm going to come underneath and between these two. That'll make it a whole lot easier. Okay. Okay. So I've gone from 3 back to 2 cables. Because the gear cable is heading up there. I don't want to stress it at all. And I'm going to drop the gear change cable out of this harness. So I've gone just 3 or 4 turns with the gear change cable in this spiral wrap. And again, if I go too far here, I'm going to end up stressing the connector, so I'm going to drop back to one cable. Take it down. Lovely. Okay, that's all good. So now what we need to do is just to refit the battery. We'll go and check everything just as a pedal tricycle to start with. The best way is to stand back and have a look at it. So, you know, you'll see if anything's offset or not straight. So you'll take care of that. I can see the seat is sitting on a little bit of an angle. It's pointing me off to the left, so I'm just going to release that. Rotate it around, put it back into position. Mudguards look good. This is ready for fitting its charged battery, which is just finished by the look of it. We'll get it out on the road. So that's it, assembly of a 20-inch electric trike bike.